Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped, and we've got another exciting episode. Today we continue our series of videos talking about the fantasy overview of a bunch of different teams. Today's episode is about the Boston Bruins. So let's dive right into it. When everybody is healthy, I project the lines to be Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak on that top line, Jake DeBrusk, David Krejci, and Craig Smith on that second line. And on the third line, Anders Bjork, Charlie Coyle, and Ondrej Kase. When Pastrnak and Marchand are out, I expect DeBrusk and Craig Smith to play on that top line. So it would be Bergeron in the center, DeBrusk on the left, and Craig Smith on the right. But when Marchand comes back, I think DeBrusk will still keep that spot on the top line. So it'll be Marchand on the left, Bergeron down center, and DeBrusk on the right. Craig Smith would move down to that second line, and I think Jack Studnicka gets a shot also on that second line at left wing. If he impresses, he might get a permanent top 6 or at least top 9 spot in the lineup. The top power play when everybody is healthy should be Jake DeBrusk, Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, and Matt Grzelcyk or Charlie McAvoy. Now, when Marchand and Pastrnak are missing at the beginning of the season due to injury, it should be Krejci and Craig Smith that get promoted to that top power play. It's also possible that to start the season, both Grzelcyk and McAvoy will be on that power play due to those injuries. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump right into our do not draft list. So first on our do not draft list, we have Tuukka Rask. And I kind of went back and forth on this one on whether to include him on this list or in the draft section of the video. And it's not that I think he's bad. He's actually a really great goalie. I just think at 26th overall, it's really high to draft this guy. But ultimately, it really depends on if the NHL schedule is condensed or not. The reason for this is because no matter what, Halak will get about half the starts for the Bruins. So if the schedule isn't condensed, there are a lot of goalies that'll get a lot more starts than Rask that are ranked much lower. And in fantasy, you want to get as many starts as possible for the most amount of points possible. You don't want to be sitting your goalies on a very frequent basis because you can't get any points then. But if the schedule ends up being condensed and there are a lot of back-to-backs, then most goalies will face about a 50-50 split anyway. So in that case, in that scenario, Tuukka Rask becomes a lot more valuable at that draft price. So second on this list is Charlie Coyle, and this has nothing to do with his talent level. It's just more that he'll be a third-line center playing with Bjork and Kase. Like, that's decent, but it's nothing to get overly excited about. At where he's going to be drafted, I'd rather draft a high-risk, high-reward guy with a little bit more upside, and the same reasoning goes to why Bjork is on this list. He's just a third liner, he won't get that many opportunities, so I'd rather draft someone else in his place. Alright guys, so let's jump right into my draft list. Number 1 on this list is Brad Marchand, and nobody should be surprised about this. He's consistently been one of the best players in the league, and he's a guy that can hit 100 points easily. He's currently ranked really low at number 23 because he's expected to be out until mid-January. He had surgery. But the thing is, the season's only projected to start January 1st at the earliest. So by that logic, he'll miss the first week and most of the second week at the very most. And so I'm absolutely going to draft Marchand if he falls that low because it'll be an absolute steal. The crazy thing is David Pastrnak, next on this list, is actually ranked a spot above him. But he's not expected back until mid-February, which is a whole month after Marchand. And I don't hate grabbing Pastrnak at that range, don't get me wrong, but Marchand holds a much better value to me just because, he'll be getting a whole extra month of playtime. Now, I'd rather draft both Marchand and Pastrnak over Bergeron, even though they're both injured right now, for 3 reasons. Number 1, Marchand and Pastrnak consistently get more points per game than Bergeron. 2, Bergeron is a center. He's only a center, and that doesn't provide too much value in fantasy hockey. Number 3, Bergeron was injury prone himself. He will in all likelihood miss some time this season anyway. So if you had to choose between these 3 guys, my order would be Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, then Patrice Bergeron. All 3 of them are great choices though. Alright, so next on the list is Yaroslav Halak. He's currently ranked at 144, and regardless of the schedule, he's probably going to get about half of Boston's starts. Maybe slightly under, but he'll get about half, kind of like it was last year. Now, compared to Tuukka Rask's ranking of 26 overall, you can understand why drafting Halak this many rounds later has a lot more value. If the schedule isn't condensed, there's a couple of goalies that are currently ranked lower than Halak, like Darcy Kemper and Sergei Bobrovsky, and they'll probably get a few more starts than Halak. The thing is, they play for worse teams, so they probably won't get as many wins as Halak, since Halak plays for better teams and probably will rack up significantly more wins than those players. If you like to play it safe, you draft Halak. If you want to take a little bit more of a risk, you can draft Kemper or Bobrovsky. So next on my draft list, ranked at 125 overall, is Charlie McAvoy. He's also ranked the number 25 D-man in the draft, and that seems quite high given that last year he only got 32 points. But Torrey Krug is gone now, so he might have a big opportunity if he jumps onto that top power play. The problem is, last year when Torrey Krug was injured, it wasn't McAvoy that was promoted to that top power play, it was Matt Grzelcyk, so we definitely have to keep an eye on that situation. But if McAvoy gets promoted to that top power play, absolutely draft this guy because his numbers should go up tremendously because that top power play is really, really good. So if we get to training camps and he's not practicing on the top power play, it would be a little worrisome. I would say that he'd be drafted a little bit too high because he's not getting that extra top power play time that he didn't get last year, and his numbers probably will look a lot like they did last year if he doesn't get that time. Now, last year he was pretty good in other stats as well. He had 131 blocks, which was 13th best in the league, and he also had a nice amount of hits. He also had 131 hits. So if your league uses those other categories, McAvoy is a pretty decent guy to draft. Just don't expect his offensive production to go up a whole lot if he doesn't get that top power play time. Alright guys, so next on my draft list is David Krejci, and he had a decent season last year. He had 43 points in 61 games, which is 2 points every 3 games, which is pretty good, right? Now the thing is, just by looking at his stats like that, you're like, okay, I'll draft this guy, but the thing is, most of David Krejci's points tend to come when Patrice Bergeron was injured. So when Bergeron was injured last year, Krejci was promoted to that top line with Marchand and Pasternak, and he just went off. Like, he was scoring points left and right. So when that happens, because Bergeron inevitably will get injured for a few games, Krejci is a really, really good play. But, you know, under normal circumstances, Krejci doesn't do all that amazing. It'll be curious to see, though, if he gets that spot on the top power play. I know in the playoffs and towards the end of the season last year, Krejci was promoted to that top power play, so he was getting a lot more points than he normally does. But I think they're going to put Jake DeBrusk on that top power play, so let's keep an eye on that. But if you are in a deeper league, you absolutely should draft David Krejci because he can provide a lot of value to you, especially if Patrice Bergeron gets hurt. Otherwise, I'd say just draft someone else, and David Krejci could be a really good streamer if Patrice Bergeron goes down. Alright guys, so next on my list is Jake DeBrusk. And yeah, he had a little bit of an off season last year, but the kid's only 24 years old. Let's cut him some slack. I think he's going to have a really, really nice breakout season this year. Reasoning why? Well, Marchand and Pasternak probably will both be missing at the start of the season. So I see Jake DeBrusk getting on that top line alongside Patrice Bergeron, maybe Craig Smith, or maybe someone else. But I do see DeBrusk being on that top line. Now, that might just be enough to set him off and, you know, get the confidence that he needs to deliver a really, really good season, even if he doesn't stay on that top line the entire season. I absolutely love drafting Jake DeBrusk this year. Alright, so last on my draft list, guys, is Craig Smith, and the reason I like drafting him is for the exact same reason. I think that that top line to start the season might end up being DeBrusk, Bergeron, and Craig Smith, and he's currently ranked 249, which is pretty late. So if you guys want to snag him up and hope that he plays on that top line, he'll probably do pretty well. He's a guy that loves to shoot the puck too. So he'll get you points just for shooting the puck in a lot of leagues. Now, I project him to play on the second line for the rest of the season, which isn't terrible either, playing alongside Krejci and DeBrusk. And if DeBrusk has the breakout season like I think he might, Craig Smith holds a little bit of value for you there too. Alright guys, so you've reached the keep an eye out for section of the video, and these players have an opportunity to be fantasy relevant based on where they play in the lineup. So that brings me to my must draft of the video, and that's Matt Grzelcyk, who I kind of alluded to before. Grzelcyk is a name that's not super well known around the NHL, and that's because he's always had guys like Torrey Krug or Charlie McAvoy overshadowing him. Interestingly though, whenever Torrey Krug went out with an injury in the past couple of seasons, it was Grzelcyk that was promoted to that top power play and not Charlie McAvoy. Now, Krug is gone. He's not on the team anymore. So if Boston decides to continue this trend, it might be Grzelcyk spending the entire season on that top power play. We'll have to wait till training camp to see if this actually happens, but I think we all know that Boston's top power play is super deadly and features Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak. If Grzelcyk gets an entire season playing on the top power play with these guys, there's no way he can perform badly. I would absolutely draft Grzelcyk with one of your last picks of the draft because right now he's currently unranked and could be an absolute steal. Alright guys, so I'm going to be monitoring the situation and I'll let you know if he ends up playing on the top power play or not. You can follow me on Twitter and I will let you know when training camps start. So next on this list is Urho Vakanainen. I hope I'm saying that right. And he's another Boston prospect that probably will get his start in the NHL this year. The thing is though, he's not super offensively minded, so I don't think that Boston will be giving him any power play time, but you know, it's something just to monitor and see what happens there. So next on this list is Jack Studnicka. Now Studnicka is Boston's best forward prospect by far, and he's a guy they hope that one day will replace Bergeron or Krejci as a top 2 center. Now, he has a chance to emerge this season after playing 5 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. Now, do I think he'll be super fantasy relevant right away? No. He'll probably start the season on the 3rd line if he makes a team at all. But you know, with the injuries to Pasternak and Marchand to start the season, he might actually get a shot on that 1st or 2nd line. So he's definitely a guy to keep an eye out. You can draft him as a shot in the dark and see how he does. Alright guys, so last but not least on this list is Ondrej Kase, and I really like Kase. I think he's a talented guy, but according to Bruce Cassidy recently, he's going to be a guy competing for a bottom 6 role. So in my opinion, that means that it'll be Craig Smith that'll take his spot from last year, playing alongside Krejci and DeBrusk. So Kase on the 3rd line, I'm not a huge fan of it, and so I don't think he'll have an all that good fantasy season. So he's a guy I'll stay away from unless he gets that spot alongside Bergeron to start the season. Alright guys, you've reached the end of the video. I really appreciate you watching all the way. Leave a thumbs up, leave a comment if you liked it. Let me know how I can improve these videos. And until next time guys, stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.